are you, sir? Has it been a fun time for you so far?
Well, it is. I got in really early in the
Yep.
morning yesterday, and it was cold and windy, but I wandered around a bit. It's just great to be back here, Simon, because the last time I was here was in '99 when we shot The Dish, and I love Melbourne.
Of
I
course.
loved that experience. I loved working with the whole Working Dog team, working with the great Sam Neill. It's one of the very
Yeah.
special, experiences in my life. So I saw Metro Comic Con. It's a great excuse to make the trip back here. It's a big trip, but I was like, it's great to be able to interact, with the fans and shake hands and take pictures and talk and because Australia has always been a very special place to me. I've worked here a few times, but of course I remember coming to Australia when I was, in my early 20s with my father to go dive at the Great Barrier Reef. And my next trip here was to do The Dish. And
Oh, wow. Beautiful.
yeah, and the last time I was here was about 7 years ago. I shot a little something in Sydney, but I didn't get to make my way over here to Melbourne. But it's such a great experience. It's just great to
Ah,
be back here. I love Australia.
we're very excited to have you back, Patrick, and thank you for your time today. I want to start this chat by going all the way back. Is yours the type of actor's journey that begins with I saw Brando and Pacino and wanted to do that, or did you pivot from some different path?
I saw Jerry Lewis. That's who I saw. Now, that was an early, yes, inspiration of mine, as was my mother, who was an actress. She got out of the industry early on. My dad got her pregnant 4 years in a row. So and he was a surgeon. So he was a doctor. She left the industry, but she did do, I've got four of those things.
This one's been quiet all morning and decides to go off like this. So I do apologize.
Well, I speak dog, Simon.
Oh, good.
So that's it. That's what I remember watching my mother do community theater. That's and that sort of gave me the bug, I guess.
How did New Jersey neighborhood react to young Patrick's acting ambitions? Was it a easy path for you?
Well, I was 3 years old when we left Jersey, but I was born in
Okay.
New Jersey. And of course, in the early days, I always, let them know that I was from New Jersey because as an actor, that gives you street cred. Growing up in Huntington Beach, California, didn't give you any street cred. So,
Sure.
yeah.
Sure. Um, you mentioned Jerry Lewis, as I kind of expected you to mention, I should say. Who are the other influences? Because I see a bit of Walter Matthau in what you do, maybe a bit of Bob Newhart in that very droll delivery. But then there's this strapping, square-jawed leading man type. Who are your acting heroes or your heroic performances?
Well, listen, I love Daniel Day-Lewis. I think he's obviously
Wow.
arguably the greatest actor of our gen. Um, um, but I guess I've leaned into comedy. I love doing the serious stuff. I did a sort of a dark comedy called The Woman Chaser years ago, which was shot film noir style,
Yes.
based on a Pulp Fiction novel, the same title by Charles Willeford. And I did a film called
Yep.
Civilization of Maxwell Bright, which is a pretty hardcore
I'm going to
movie.
get to that because I'm going to get to that. I'm going to indulge a little bit later with a question about that because that's one of my favorite things that you've ever done.
I'd love to. Well, thank you. In LA, they really do, in a creative industry, they lack creativity in regards to casting oftentimes. Sling Blade is one of my favorite little films of all
Wow.
time. And I remember people were so impressed by John Ritter in that just because he wasn't tripping over couches. I'm like, well, he's an actor, so he's not tripping over couches. That's Three's Company. I did 9 episodes of a sitcom called Seinfeld and was in danger of getting typecast. I let him know after that too that I didn't have any interest in doing a putty spinoff because there was a question or two where that was posed to me. Nothing official. They just said, "Would you have any interest?" I said, "No." As an actor, you have to get out. You have to reinvent. Otherwise, And so literally, when I did The Dish, Rob Sitch, I remember I spoke to him, And I said, you only know me from Seinfeld, and now I'm playing a NASA scientist, probably the least funny character in this film. I go, what made you think of me? And he just said, well, I reckon you could do it. And I was like, well, thank you, because you have that perspective. You get it with actors that so many in LA, they just don't. They haven't. They see and in LA too, what ends up happening is when you do a show like Seinfeld, you always end up signing with giant agencies because they work so hard to get you. They just want to get you. They get you,
Sure.
and then you're a small fish in their pond, and then they're not doing anything for you. They just pick up the phone when you get offers. So literally for me, my entire career has just been working with wonderful people who felt compelled or inspired one way or another to hire me. So like Barry Sonnenfeld, if there wasn't a Barry Sonnenfeld in my life, I don't know where I would be. I did The Tick with him years ago, and then we did a film called Big Trouble. We did a film. I worked with him a little bit on Men in Black 2. But then like when I did a series of unfortunate events for Netflix, if it was up to Netflix, I wouldn't have been on their list of their top 200 people.
Wow.
But it was Daniel Handler who wrote Snicket, and he was also a fan of this film I did called The Woman Chaser, Daniel Handler. So between Daniel Handler and Barry Sonnenfeld, they just let Netflix know. They're like, no, Warburton's Lemony Snicket, and you have to understand this. But they wouldn't have gotten it. They don't see things, that way. They look at I guess, the more obvious answers. So to have worked, been able to work with the Working Dog people and the great Sam Neill on The Dish was, I'm just thankful to Rob and for having had that opportunity. And, and back then, Simon, so many things were happening. I was very, very busy. You start thinking, wow, well, wonderful opportunities like The Dish just fall into your lap every year. Well, they don't. And so that's why, too, I can look back 23 years, and just, just be so thankful that I got that opportunity, because it was such a special project and the work here.
Let's jump forward in my questions. I will ask you about The Civilization of Maxwell Bright. It was a film and a performance that absolutely rocked my world at the time. And I'm wondering, first of all, on your recollections of bringing that character to life, and secondly, how might that character play in America 2024?
Not well.
Well, or maybe more heroically. Who knows how it would play? And
it was actually loosely based on a neighbor of the writer and director David Baird, who was young, died of cancer, and was a bit of a mess in certain ways, and very angry. And you don't know what makes them like that. Perhaps it's the cancer in their brain or in their body that's turning them into, a bit of a monster. So Maxwell Bright was a mess, but there was obviously there's redemption that came from this beautiful person that came into his life that had such tolerance and grace for this rube, for this horrible, treated her horribly. And she somehow or another saw through that, his weaknesses and his humanity, and was able to bring him to this place before he passed. So it was a powerful story. I mean, look, we made that movie for $200,000. It was shot on PAL, so it looks like shit, but it's but I was proud of the acting in it, and we had a lot of really fine actors in it, and
yeah, it's a wonderful film, mate. Congratulations on that film. I want to ask you about a couple of the performances that the fans will come out for this weekend. Donning the full body suit that turned you into the Tick, was that just a straight up body cast, or did they have to do a bit of sculpting?
Oh yeah, there was a cast. They did a face cast. They did all that stuff. Yeah, they don't need to do that anymore. I guess they just do it with a camera, and they're done. But yeah, there was a lot that went into.
Brought you to life. It absolutely brought you to life. It's a wonderful, wonderful performance.
It's funny. I've told Christopher McCulloch, a friend of mine. He was one of the writers in The Tick, and he was like Ben Edlund's right-hand man. And I said, when he came to me with the Venture Brothers. So the Venture Brothers, I don't know if you've ever seen that. It's an old Adult Swim
Yes.
cartoon, and it had a
Yep.
good long life. At the time, I kind of just looked at that as a consolation prize, because the Tick didn't get picked up. We had high hopes for the Tick. He said, "Do you want to do this cartoon?" I was like, "Yeah, sure, I guess." And then, who would have known that, that's the one that would have just such legs and
Oh, for sure.
Years. Yeah.
So, well, let's get down to the fans. You're in town for the Metric Comic Con fan event, and you have what I imagine many actors would kill for, and that's this multi-generational fan base. The Gen Xers love you for Seinfeld, and the millennial love you for the Family Guy, and the kids love you for Emperor's New Groove, and the toddlers love you even for Grandpa Shark. So what's the message to the fans? What does this sort of broad and all-encompassing fan base mean to an actor, and especially to you?
Well, it's lovely, and I am so appreciative of it. As actors, we're always looking to do things, different, and we want to challenge ourselves. And I'm not ready to stop at that point. The really good, solid opportunities don't fall in your lap, perhaps as much, especially as you age. But I love doing interesting. This film I just did called The Duel. We shot that 3 years ago. It's a little indie. We shot in Indianapolis for Mexico and San Diego in Indianapolis.
Wow.
Grindstone picked it up, and then the bigger company, Lionsgate, took it from Grindstone, and they're bumping it up from an indie to an actual theatrical release. So on July 31st, wow. It's going to be on 500 screens in the States. It's
Congratulations.
Like $1 million budget film. But we were all very proud of that one. And that was a cool opportunity because it was a very different character for me.
Yeah.
But I'm looking to do, I'm always looking for something interesting or different. I always found that whenever you see somebody make a turn or do something different, that I find that intriguing. Somebody who's not an obvious cast,
Sure.
casting decision, So that's what I try to do.
Nice one. Patrick, I guess I haven't asked you about Putty, and I know I should ask you about Putty. Can I just
get a... to.
I know
okay.
you. I know.
Does.
I've got listeners. If you knew how many random Seinfeld references we made doing this stupid podcast, then the fans are saying, "What about the Putty question?" Give me a brief rundown of that first table read, the episode in which the Fusilli Jerry episode. We meet Putty for the first time. That first table read, was it all there in the script? Let me put it this way. Jerry and Julia and Jason are all kind of playing variations on themselves to varying degrees. I think Michael Richardson's Kramer and Patrick Warburton's Putty are the two great comic creations of that series, and that's all on you. And to my mind, that's all on you. What was there at the first table read?
Everybody seemed to. Putty seemed to appeal to everybody. He's such a moron. Of course, it was great to see, Jerry and Larry David and Belly laughing and all that. So we could have done a lot more episodes of Putty. See, I did it. They brought me back a couple weeks later to do the Face Painter episode. And then the next 2 years, I have a family. I got 4 kids. I was the sole provider. So I took every job that came my way back then. Sure. So I was on a CBS show at the time, and they would not the next 2 years, I'm getting calls about availability to do Seinfeld again. So in season 8, in season 7 and season 8, I could have been working on Seinfeld, but I couldn't because the CBS show wouldn't let me do another network show.
Ah, of course.
Now,
yes.
Fortunately, that show got canceled. I crossed paths with Jerry. And he said, "Hey, can you come back on the show?" And I said, "Perfect. Yes, I can." So I did most of my episodes during the 9th and final season. Yeah.
If it's any consolation to you, the Putty line "Let's make out" became a thing between my wife and I. So a lot of good memories there. A lot of good memories. Patrick Warburton, thank you so much for being on Screen Watching. It's such an honor to talk to you and a joy. So thank you, mate. Enjoy your time in Melbourne with the fans.
Thank you, Simon. Such a pleasure speaking with you. I really appreciate it. Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.